Hello and welcome to Ironwad Whispers, your corner for stories that hit the heart and spark the imagination. Before we continue, drop a comment with where you're listening from. I'd love to see our community grow and connect worldwide. And if you enjoy this story, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a story. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Once upon a time, a young woman discovered the kind of love she had always dreamed of, and she vowed never to break that bond. But everything changed when her billionaire ex resurfaced from the shadows of her past. With him came a whirlwind of emotions she thought she had left behind forever. Teresa Campbell's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her morning latte at the small cafe on Sunset Boulevard. The Los Angeles morning was crisp, unusual for late September, and she pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. She had been coming to this same coffee shop for 3 months now, ever since she'd moved to California to start fresh after her devastating breakup. The familiar scent of roasted beans and the gentle hum of conversation had become her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in her writing without the ghosts of her past haunting every corner. Patrick Wales noticed her the moment she walked in, just as he had every morning for the past 2 weeks. He was a freelance photographer who had recently relocated from town in Cape May, drawn to the endless possibilities that Los Angeles offered. There was something about the way she carried herself, a mixture of determination and vulnerability that made him want to know her story. Today, he finally gathered the courage to approach her table. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm and genuine. "I've noticed you always order the same drink and sit in the same spot. I'm Patrick, and I was wondering if you'd mind some company. I promise I'm not a serial killer, just a photographer who appreciates consistency in an inconsistent world." Teresa looked up from her laptop, startled by the interruption, but pleasantly surprised by the kind eyes that met hers. Patrick had an easy smile and sandy brown hair that caught the morning light streaming through the cafe windows. Against her better judgment, she found herself gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Teresa," she replied, closing her laptop halfway, "and I suppose one coffee with a stranger won't hurt. Though I should warn you, I'm not much of a morning person until I've had at least half of this latte." Their conversation flowed more naturally than either had expected. Patrick shared stories of his photography adventures, from capturing sunrise over the Pacific to documenting street art in downtown LA. Teresa found herself laughing for the first time in months, as he recounted a particularly disastrous photo shoot involving a temperamental model and an unexpected rainstorm. She revealed that she was a freelance writer, carefully avoiding any mention of her past life or the man who had shattered her heart. As the morning crowd thinned and the sun climbed higher, they realized they had been talking for over 2 hours. Patrick's genuine interest in her work and his refreshing lack of pretense made Teresa feel something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Over the following weeks, their morning coffee meetings became a cherished routine. Patrick would arrive early to secure their favorite corner table, always with a new story or a collection of photos on his tablet to share. Teresa began to open up gradually, sharing snippets of her childhood in Ohio and her dreams of becoming a novelist. She spoke of her love for classic literature and her secret addiction to terrible reality TV shows, which made Patrick laugh until his sides hurt. He noticed how her eyes lit up when she talked about her writing, and how she unconsciously tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear when she was deep in thought. Patrick was patient, never pushing for more than she was willing to share. He sensed there were parts of her story she kept locked away, and he respected those boundaries. Instead, he focused on making her smile, bringing her small surprises like vintage books from flea markets or perfectly captured photos of the sunrise that reminded him of her. Teresa found herself looking forward to their meetings with an anticipation that both thrilled and terrified her. She had built walls around her heart after Arnold, but Patrick was slowly, gently, finding ways through her defenses without even trying. After 6 weeks of morning coffees, Patrick finally asked Teresa on a proper date. "I know this great food truck festival in Venice Beach this Saturday," he said, trying to keep his voice casual, despite the nervousness he felt. "Live music, amazing tacos, and the best people watching in the city." "What do you say?" Teresa's heart raced as she considered his invitation. Dating meant vulnerability, meant opening herself up to the possibility of pain again. But looking at Patrick's hopeful expression, she realized she had already let him in more than she had intended. The festival was everything Patrick had promised, and more. They wandered between colorful trucks, sampling Korean fusion tacos and gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches, laughing as they tried to eat messy food gracefully. Patrick's camera hung around his neck, but he seemed more interested in watching Teresa than capturing the scene around them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, a local band started playing on a makeshift stage. Without thinking, Patrick took Teresa's hand and pulled her into the crowd of dancers. Under the string lights and California stars, with the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and possibility, Teresa felt something inside her begin to heal. The weeks that followed their first date were filled with adventures both big and small. Patrick introduced Teresa to his world of photography, taking her on early morning shoots to capture the city waking up. She learned to see Los Angeles through his eyes, not as a place of broken dreams and false promises, but as a canvas of endless stories waiting to be told. He taught her about apertures and shutter speeds, but more importantly, he taught her to look for beauty in unexpected places. Teresa, in turn, shared her love of words with him, reading him passages from her works in progress and introducing him to her favorite authors. Their relationship deepened naturally, without the pressure or pretense that had marked Teresa's past. Patrick was refreshingly different from anyone she had dated before. He was content with simple pleasures, a home-cooked meal, a walk on the beach, or an evening spent reading together on his apartment balcony. He didn't need expensive restaurants or exclusive events to be happy, he just needed her. Teresa found herself writing again with a passion she thought she had lost forever. The stories flowed from her fingers, inspired by this new chapter in her life. She began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could trust her heart again. 3 months into their relationship, Teresa finally felt ready to tell Patrick about Arnold. They were sitting on the beach near his apartment, watching the sunset paint the waves gold and crimson. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice barely audible over the sound of the surf. "About why I came to California, about who I was before." Patrick took her hand, squeezing it gently, letting her know he was there to listen without judgment. The story poured out of her. How she had met Arnold Stones at a charity event in Chicago 5 years ago. How his charm and success had swept her off her feet. She told Patrick about the whirlwind romance, the promises of forever, and the glamorous life she had lived as the girlfriend of one of the music industry's most powerful moguls. Her voice broke as she described finding Arnold with another woman in their penthouse. The betrayal made worse by his casual dismissal of their relationship as if it had meant nothing. He built an empire on love songs and ballads about devotion, she said bitterly, but he didn't know the first thing about actual love. Patrick pulled her close, feeling her tears soak through his shirt, and promised himself he would never give her a reason to cry like that again. Patrick's reaction to Teresa's revelation only deepened her feelings for him. He didn't judge her for her past, or make her feel foolish for having loved someone who didn't deserve it. Instead, he thanked her for trusting him with her story, and assured her that her past didn't change how he felt about her. "We all have histories," he said simply. "What matters is who we choose to be now." His acceptance and understanding felt like a balm to wounds she thought would never heal. As autumn turned to winter in Los Angeles, their relationship flourished. Teresa moved some of her things into Patrick's beachside apartment, and they established new routines together. Morning runs along the shore replaced solitary coffee shop visits, though they still returned to their special cafe at least once a week. Patrick's photography business was growing, with several galleries showing interest in his work, while Teresa had begun submitting her novel to literary agents. They celebrated each small victory together and supported each other through disappointments. For the first time in over a year, Teresa felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. On a particularly beautiful December evening, Patrick surprised Teresa with a picnic on their favorite stretch of beach. He had strung battery-powered fairy lights between two palm trees and laid out a blanket with all her favorite foods. As they watched the stars appear one by one in the clear night sky, Patrick turned to her with an expression more serious than she had ever seen. "Teresa," he began, "these past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. I know we haven't been together very long in the grand scheme of things, but I want you to know that I'm all in. Whatever the future holds, I want to face it with you." Teresa felt tears prick her eyes, but these were tears of joy, not pain. She thought about all the promises Arnold had made and broken, all the grand gestures that had ultimately meant nothing. Patrick's simple, heartfelt declaration meant more than all the expensive gifts and elaborate surprises combined. "I promise to be faithful to you," she whispered, the words carrying the weight of her past and the hope of her future. Not just physically, but emotionally, completely. "You've shown me what real love looks like, Patrick. I promise to cherish that, and never take it for granted." They sealed their promises with a kiss under the stars, neither knowing that their newfound happiness was about to be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. The new year brought new opportunities for both of them. Teresa received her first positive response from a literary agent who was excited about her novel's potential. The manuscript, a story about second chances and finding yourself after loss, resonated with readers in early reviews. Patrick's first solo exhibition opened at a small but prestigious gallery in Silver Lake, featuring a series he called Morning Light, photographs that captured the quiet beauty of Los Angeles at dawn. Unknown to Teresa, many of the images had been inspired by their early morning meetings at the coffee shop. They celebrated these milestones together, surrounded by new friends they had made in the creative community of Los Angeles. Teresa discovered she loved being part of Patrick's world, attending gallery openings and meeting other artists who were pursuing their passions without compromise. Patrick, in turn, accompanied her to book readings and writing workshops, proud to be with someone whose talent with words matched his eye for visual beauty. Their life together was simple but rich, filled with meaningful work and genuine connections. Teresa often found herself marveling at how different this relationship was from her time with Arnold, less glamorous perhaps, but infinitely more real. It was a typical Thursday morning in late January when Teresa's carefully reconstructed world began to shift. She was at her favorite bookstore in Los Feliz, searching for research materials for her next novel, when she overheard two women discussing the music industry. "Did you hear Arnold Stones is expanding his empire to the West Coast?" one of them said excitedly. "Apparently he's opening a massive recording studio complex right here in LA. They say he's been scouting locations for months." Teresa's blood ran cold at the mention of his name. her hands suddenly shaking as she gripped the book she'd been examining. She left the bookstore without buying anything, her mind racing with implications. Arnold in Los Angeles meant the possibility of running into him, meant the careful distance she had put between her past and present might collapse. She thought about telling Patrick immediately, but decided to wait, hoping perhaps it was just a rumor. After all, Arnold had always preferred Chicago and New York, cities with established music scenes and connections he had cultivated for years. Surely he wouldn't actually relocate to California. But deep down, Teresa knew that Arnold never did anything by chance. If he was coming to Los Angeles, he had a reason, and she feared that reason might have something to do with her. Over the next few weeks, Teresa found it increasingly difficult to maintain her usual equilibrium. She jumped every time her phone rang with an unknown number, half expecting to hear Arnold's smooth voice on the other end. Patrick noticed her distraction, but attributed it to nerves about her upcoming meeting with publishers in New York. She hadn't told him about the overheard conversation, convincing herself that worrying him about a possibility was unnecessary. Instead, she threw herself into her writing and their relationship with renewed intensity, as if she could ward off the past by fully embracing the present. Patrick planned special outings to help her relax. A weekend trip to Big Sur, a cooking class in Santa Monica, tickets to see her favorite band at the Greek Theater. Teresa loved him even more for his thoughtfulness. But guilt gnawed at her for keeping secrets. She had promised to be faithful, and didn't that include being honest about her fears? Yet, every time she opened her mouth to tell him, the words stuck in her throat. She didn't want to taint their happiness with the shadow of Arnold's stones. She didn't want Patrick to see her as someone still affected by her ex, even though the truth was that Arnold's potential presence in Los Angeles terrified her more than she cared to admit. The news became official on a rainy Tuesday in February. Teresa was scrolling through her social media feed when she saw it. A press release announcing that Stone's music empire would be opening its West Coast headquarters in Los Angeles, complete with state-of-the-art recording studios and a performance venue. The article featured a photo of Arnold looking as polished and confident as ever, his dark eyes seeming to stare directly at her through the screen. The accompanying quote made her stomach turn. "Los Angeles has always held a special place in my heart. I'm excited to bring my vision for the future of music to the City of Angels." Patrick found her an hour later, still staring at her laptop screen, tears streaming down her face. Without a word, he read the article over her shoulder, understanding immediately why she was so upset. "Hey," he said softly, closing the laptop and pulling her into his arms. "This doesn't change anything between us. He's just another businessman moving to LA. The city's big enough that you'll never have to see him." But Teresa knew better. Arnold didn't just move somewhere, he conquered it, and she had a sinking feeling that his arrival in Los Angeles was anything but coincidental. That night, Teresa told Patrick everything she had been holding back, her fear that Arnold had come to Los Angeles because of her, her worry that seeing him again would somehow undo all the healing she had done, her terror that the life she had built with Patrick would crumble under the weight of her past. Patrick listened without interrupting, his face grave, but his hands steady in hers. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "I understand why you're scared," he said finally. "But Teresa, you're not the same person you were when you were with him. You're stronger now. We're stronger. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." His words gave her courage, but anxiety still coursed through her veins in the days that followed. She found herself looking over her shoulder when they went out, scanning crowds for Arnold's familiar figure. Patrick, true to his word, stayed close and supportive, never showing any jealousy or insecurity about her reaction to her ex's arrival in town. Instead, he focused on reminding her of all the good things in their life together, their morning runs, their creative projects, their plans for the future. Slowly, Teresa began to relax, allowing herself to believe that perhaps Arnold's presence in Los Angeles really would have no impact on their lives. 6 weeks passed without incident, and Teresa had almost convinced herself that her fears were unfounded. Patrick's second exhibition was opening at a larger gallery in West Hollywood, and she was determined to be the supportive partner he deserved. She wore a simple black dress that Patrick loved, her hair swept up to show off the delicate silver earrings he had given her for her birthday. The gallery was packed with art enthusiasts, collectors, and press, all eager to see Patrick's new work. Teresa felt a surge of pride watching him discuss his photographs with genuine passion and humility. She was fetching champagne from the bar when she felt it, that familiar prickle at the back of her neck that meant someone was watching her. She turned slowly, her heart already knowing what her eyes would confirm. Arnold Stones stood near the gallery entrance, looking exactly as she remembered him. Tall, impeccably dressed, with an aura of power that drew people to him like moths to a flame. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Then Arnold smiled, that devastating smile that had once made her weak in the knees, and began walking toward her. Teresa's hand shook as she set down the champagne glasses, her promise to Patrick echoing in her mind as her past and present collided. Teresa. Arnold's voice was exactly as she remembered. Deep, cultured, with just a hint of the Chicago streets where he'd grown up before building his empire. You look beautiful. California clearly agrees with you. He stood before her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne, the same scent that used to cling to her clothes after their nights together. Teresa forced herself to stand straight, to meet his gaze without flinching. "Arnold," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "What are you doing here?" "I'm a patron of the arts now," he replied smoothly, gesturing to the photographs around them. "When I heard about this promising new photographer, I had to see his work for myself." Imagine my surprise when I realized his muse looked remarkably familiar. His eyes traveled over her, slowly, possessively, as if he had any right to look at her that way anymore. Teresa felt anger rise in her chest, burning away some of the fear. "I'm not anyone's muse," she said firmly. "I'm here supporting my boyfriend. Now, if you'll excuse me." But Arnold caught her arm gently as she tried to pass, his touch sending unwanted memories flooding back. "We need to talk, Teresa, privately. There are things you don't understand about why I'm here." Before she could respond, Patrick appeared at her side, his presence immediately calming her racing heart. He looked between them, taking in Arnold's hand on her arm and Teresa's pale face, and understood the situation immediately. "You must be Arnold," he said, his voice polite but cool. "I'm Patrick Wales. I've heard about you." Arnold released Teresa's arm, sizing up Patrick with the calculating look of a predator evaluating potential prey. "The photographer," he said, making it sound somehow dismissive. "Your work is interesting. Very different from the artists I usually collect." The tension between the two men was palpable, but Patrick simply smiled and put his arm around Teresa's waist. "Different can be good," he said easily. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to steal my girlfriend back. There are people I'd like her to meet." He guided Teresa away, leaving Arnold standing alone by the bar, his dark eyes following their retreat. The rest of the gallery opening passed in a blur. Teresa tried to focus on Patrick's moment, smiling and chatting with potential buyers, but she could feel Arnold's presence like a weight in the room. He didn't approach them again, but she caught glimpses of him throughout the evening, always watching, always waiting. Patrick, to his credit, didn't let Arnold's appearance ruin his night. He sold several pieces and received 2 commission requests, achievements that should have had them celebrating. Instead, they drove home in heavy silence, both processing what had just happened. Once they were safe in Patrick's apartment, Teresa finally broke down. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, the stress of the evening overwhelming her. "Your big night, and he had to show up and ruin everything. The way he looked at me, the things he said. Patrick, I think he's here for me. I think he came to Los Angeles to find me." Patrick held her tightly, his own emotions carefully controlled. He had seen the way Arnold looked at Teresa, the casual possessiveness of a man who was used to getting what he wanted. But more than that, he had seen the fear in Teresa's eyes, the way she had shrunk into herself in Arnold's presence. "Listen to me," he said firmly, tilting her chin up to meet his eyes. "He didn't ruin anything. Tonight was about my work, and it was successful. As for Arnold, he's just a man with too much money and too much ego. He has no power over you anymore, Teresa. Not unless you give it to him." 3 days after the gallery opening, Teresa's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello, Teresa." Arnold's voice flowed through the speaker like aged whiskey. "I hope I'm not interrupting your writing. I remember how focused you get when you're working on a story." The casual intimacy of his words made her skin crawl. "How did you get this number?" she demanded, moving to the balcony where Patrick couldn't hear her conversation. She didn't want to upset him more than necessary. "I have my ways," Arnold said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I meant what I said the other night. We need to talk. There are things about our ending that you never understood, reasons for what happened that might change how you see everything. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a second chance. I just want an hour of your time. 1 coffee, Teresa. You can even bring the photographer if it makes you feel safer." The suggestion that she might need protection from him was both insulting and probably accurate. "I have nothing to say to you, Arnold. What we had is over. It's been over for more than a year. I've moved on, and you should too." She heard him sigh, a sound she remembered from countless phone calls during their relationship. "I've bought a house in the hills," he said, ignoring her rejection. "I'm making LR my primary base of operations. We're going to run into each other, Teresa. Wouldn't it be better to clear the air now, rather than have it hanging over us?" Teresa ended the call without agreeing to anything, but Arnold's words haunted her for days. He was right about one thing. Los Angeles, for all its sprawl, could be a small town in the entertainment industry. If he was serious about making it his base of operations, their paths would inevitably cross. She found herself distracted, jumping every time her phone buzzed, checking over her shoulder during her morning runs. Patrick noticed her anxiety, of course, but she couldn't bring herself to tell him about the phone call. She had promised to be faithful, but did that mean burdening him with every interaction with her ex? She sought advice from her friend Maria, a fellow writer she had met at a workshop. Over coffee at their favorite spot in Silver Lake, Teresa laid out her dilemma. "Part of me thinks I should just meet with him, get it over with," she admitted. "Maybe if I hear him out, he'll leave me alone. But another part of me is terrified that seeing him again, really talking to him, will bring back feelings I've worked so hard to bury." Maria stirred her latte thoughtfully. "What does Patrick think?" she asked. Teresa's guilty expression was answer enough. "Oh, honey," Maria sighed. "The problem isn't whether you should meet Arnold. The problem is that you're already keeping secrets from Patrick. That's not faithfulness. That's fear. And fear has a way of destroying relationships faster than any ex ever could." That evening, Teresa told Patrick about Arnold's call. She expected anger or jealousy, but Patrick's reaction surprised her. He was hurt. Not by Arnold's attempt to contact her, but by her decision to keep it from him. "I thought we were a team," he said quietly, sitting across from her at their small dining table. When you handle things alone, when you keep secrets to protect me, you're telling me you don't trust me to handle difficult situations. That hurts more than anything Arnold could do. Teresa reached for his hand, relief flooding through her when he didn't pull away. "You're right," she admitted. "I've been so focused on not letting Arnold affect our relationship that I've been damaging it myself." "I'm sorry, Patrick. I should have told you immediately." They talked for hours that night, really talked, about fears and insecurities, and what faithfulness meant to each of them. Patrick admitted that Arnold's wealth and power intimidated him, made him wonder if he could really compete with what Teresa had once had. Teresa assured him that what they had built together, trust, genuine connection, shared dreams, was worth more than all the money in Arnold's empire. By the time they went to bed, they had reached a decision together. Teresa would meet with Arnold, but Patrick would be nearby, a reminder of the life she had chosen and the love that sustained her. They chose a public place, a busy cafe in Beverly Hills, where Arnold's celebrity status would ensure they couldn't have too private a conversation. Patrick sat at a table across the room, ostensibly working on his laptop but keeping a watchful eye on the proceedings. Teresa arrived exactly on time, refusing to give Arnold the satisfaction of seeming eager or nervous. He was already there, looking perfectly at home among the Hollywood elite who frequented the establishment. He stood when he saw her, ever the gentleman, at least in public. "Thank you for coming," Arnold said once they were seated. Up close she could see subtle changes in him, a few grey hairs at his temples, fine lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Success, it seemed, came with its own costs. "I won't waste your time with small talk. I came to Los Angeles for several reasons, but yes, you were one of them." Teresa's heart sank even as she had expected this admission. "I don't want you back," Arnold continued, surprising her. "I know I destroyed what we had, and I've accepted that. But I needed to explain why." "You deserve that much." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words for the first time since she'd known him. "The night you found me with Vanessa, it wasn't what you thought. Or rather, it was exactly what you thought, but not for the reasons you assumed." "I was being blackmailed," Arnold said quietly, his usual confidence cracking. "Vanessa had information about some of my early business dealings, things that could have destroyed everything I'd built. She wanted more than money. She wanted me. That night was supposed to be the end of it one night to keep her quiet, but you came home early from your trip." He trailed off, seeing the expression on Teresa's face. "You expect me to believe that?" she asked, her voice sharp with old pain. "You, Arnold Stones, who never let anyone control you, who built an empire on being 10 steps ahead of everyone else. You want me to believe you were a victim?" Arnold's jaw tightened, a flash of the old arrogance showing through. "I'm not asking for your sympathy or forgiveness. I made a choice, my empire over our relationship. I chose wrong, but I chose. I've regretted it every day, since—" He pulled out a folder from his briefcase, sliding it across the table. "The full story is in there, including the evidence Vanessa had and how I eventually dealt with her. I'm not proud of any of it, but I thought you deserved the truth." Teresa didn't touch the folder, her mind reeling. Even if his story was true, it didn't change the fundamental betrayal. He had chosen his business over their love, had been willing to sleep with another woman rather than trust her with the truth. "Why now?" she asked. "Why tell me this now when I've finally moved on?" "Because I've changed," Arnold said, leaning forward intently. "Losing you made me realize what really mattered. I've spent the last year restructuring everything. My business, my life, my priorities. I came to La partly for the expansion, yes, but also for a fresh start. And when I saw you at that gallery, happy with someone else—" He paused, vulnerability flickering across his features. I realized I needed to clear the air between us, not to win you back, but to free us both. Teresa studied him, trying to reconcile this seemingly humble version of Arnold with the man who had broken her heart. "What do you really want?" she asked directly. "I want to make amends," he said simply. "I want to know that you're happy, that I didn't destroy your ability to trust and love. Your boyfriend seems like a good man. Different from me, but maybe that's what you need." The dismissive undertone in his voice when he mentioned Patrick made Teresa's temper flare. "Patrick is twice the man you ever were," she said firmly. "He's honest, kind, and he would never betray me for any reason. So yes, I'm happy. Happier than I ever was with you." Arnold absorbed the hit with a slight flinch. "Good," he said finally. "That's good. But Teresa, I hope we can at least be civil when we encounter each other. LA's music and art scenes overlap more than you might think. Your boyfriend's career is rising, and I have influence in those circles. It would be better for everyone if we could coexist peacefully." The subtle threat in Arnold's words wasn't lost on Teresa. She felt her spine stiffen, the old familiar feeling of being manipulated washing over her. "Are you threatening Patrick's career?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Arnold held up his hands in a gesture of innocence. "Not at all. I'm simply pointing out that the art world is small and interconnected. I've already purchased 2 of his pieces. They're quite good. I could be a valuable patron for him, help open doors that might otherwise remain closed. All I'm asking for is civility, Teresa. Surely that's not too much." "What you're asking for is control," Teresa shot back, finally understanding his game. "You can't stand that I've moved on, that I'm happy without you. So you're trying to insert yourself into our lives, to make yourself indispensable. But I know you, Arnold. I know how you operate." She stood, leaving the folder untouched on the table. "Stay away from Patrick. Stay away from me. We don't need your patronage or your influence. We're doing just fine on our own." Arnold remained seated, watching her with those dark, calculating eyes. "You always were stubborn," he said softly. "It's one of the things I loved about you. But Teresa, whether you like it or not, I'm part of the LA scene now. You can't avoid me forever, and who knows, maybe in time you'll realize that having me as a friend is better than having me as an enemy." Patrick was by her side the moment she left the cafe, having abandoned his pretense of working the instant he saw her stand. "Are you okay?" he asked, studying her flushed face and clenched fists. "What did he say?" Teresa took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down before recounting the conversation. She told him everything. The blackmail story, the veiled threats about Patrick's career, the folder still sitting on the cafe table. Patrick's expression darkened as he listened, especially when she mentioned Arnold's patron comments. "I don't want his money or his influence," Patrick said firmly as they walked to his car. "If he thinks he can manipulate us through my work, he's wrong." Teresa felt a surge of love for this man who valued integrity over opportunity. "I know," she said, squeezing his hand. "But Arnold doesn't give up easily. He's used to getting what he wants, and right now, I think what he wants is to stay in my life somehow. We need to be prepared for him to try other tactics." Patrick stopped walking and turned to face her, his hands on her shoulders. "Then we face them together," he said simply. "No more secrets. No more handling things alone. We're stronger as a team, remember?" Teresa nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones. Whatever Arnold had planned, they would face it together. Over the next few weeks, Arnold's presence in their lives became increasingly difficult to ignore. His company's logo appeared as a sponsor at art events they attended. His name was mentioned in conversations with gallery owners and fellow artists. He seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, a ghost haunting the edges of their world. Teresa tried to maintain normalcy, focusing on her writing and supporting Patrick's growing success. But the constant reminders of Arnold's proximity wore on her nerves. Then the gifts started arriving. First, it was a rare first edition of one of Teresa's favorite novels, delivered to the coffee shop where she wrote. The card simply said, "Thought you'd appreciate this." She wanted to throw it away, but couldn't bring herself to destroy such a beautiful book. Next came an anonymous donation to the literacy program where she volunteered, with a note praising her dedication to helping others find their voice through writing. Each gift was perfectly chosen, demonstrating an intimate knowledge of her interests and values that made her skin crawl. Patrick urged her to return everything, but some gifts, like the donation, couldn't be undone without hurting innocent beneficiaries. It was classic Arnold, she realized. He was creating situations where rejecting him would make her seem petty or cruel. The situation escalated when Teresa's literary agent called with unexpected news. "I just got off the phone with someone from Stone's Entertainment," her agent said excitedly. "They're branching into publishing and film production, and they're interested in your manuscript. They want to offer you a deal that includes both book publication and film rights. Teresa, this could be huge for your career." Teresa felt her stomach drop. Of course, Arnold would try this approach, offering her the kind of opportunity most writers only dreamed of, knowing she would have to choose between her principles and her ambitions. "I need to think about it," Teresa managed, her mind racing. After ending the call, she immediately told Patrick, who was working on editing photos in their home office. His face went through several expressions: anger, frustration, and finally resignation. "He's clever," Patrick admitted grudgingly. "He knows you won't take anything from him directly, so he's making it a business proposition. If you turn it down, you're not rejecting him personally. You're potentially sabotaging your own career." They spent hours discussing the offer, weighing the pros and cons. The opportunity was genuinely incredible, and Teresa couldn't deny that part of her was tempted. But accepting would mean letting Arnold back into her life in a professional capacity, giving him a legitimate reason to contact her, to be involved in her success. After a sleepless night, Teresa made her decision. She called her agent and politely declined the offer from Stone's Entertainment. "Are you sure?" her agent pressed. "This kind of opportunity doesn't come along often, Teresa. They're offering a significant advance in marketing support that most debut authors can only dream of." Teresa remained firm, explaining that she had personal reasons for declining without going into detail. Her agent was disappointed, but professional, promising to continue shopping the manuscript to other publishers. Patrick found her on the balcony afterward, staring out at the ocean. "You did the right thing," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Your book will find its home with a publisher who wants it for the right reasons, not as a manipulation tactic." Teresa leaned back against him, drawing strength from his presence. "I know," she said softly, "but part of me wonders if I'm being foolish, letting pride get in the way of my career." Patrick turned her to face him. "It's not pride," he said firmly. "It's integrity. And that's one of the things I love most about you. Your success will mean so much more because you earned it honestly, without compromising your values." Arnold's response to her rejection came swiftly. Within days, Teresa started noticing his presence more directly in their lives. He appeared at the farmer's market where they shopped on Sundays, nodding politely, but keeping his distance. He joined the board of the Arts Foundation that supported Patrick's gallery, making his influence felt without directly interfering. Most unsettling, he purchased the penthouse in the building adjacent to theirs, giving him a clear view of their balcony and daily routines. "He's stalking us," Teresa said one evening, pulling the curtains closed against the possibility of Arnold watching. "This isn't normal behavior, Patrick. He's obsessed." Patrick's jaw was tight with suppressed anger. He had always prided himself on being a peaceful person. But Arnold's campaign was testing his limits. "Maybe we should consider moving," he suggested. "Find somewhere he can't follow," but Teresa shook her head. "No, this is our home. I won't let him drive us away. I ran from Chicago to escape him. I'm done running." Her determination was fierce, but Patrick could see the strain in her eyes. The way she jumped at unexpected sounds and constantly checked her surroundings. The inevitable direct confrontation came at a charity gala for arts education, an event both Patrick and Arnold were obligated to attend due to their professional connections. Teresa had debated staying home, but Patrick needed her support, and she refused to let Arnold's presence dictate her life. She wore a deep blue dress that Patrick had helped her pick out, her head held high as they entered the ballroom. The evening started smoothly enough, with Patrick networking with potential clients and Teresa chatting with other artists' partners she had befriended. Then Arnold appeared at their table during dinner, pulling out the empty chair beside Teresa before anyone could object. "Patrick, Teresa," he said smoothly, as if his presence was perfectly natural. "Lovely event, isn't it? I'm particularly excited about the new scholarship program we're funding, the use of 'we wasn't lost' on anyone at the table." Patrick's hand found Teresa's under the tablecloth, a silent reminder of solidarity. "The foundation does important work," Patrick replied evenly. "Though I think the real heroes are the teachers and students, not those of us who simply write checks." It was a subtle dig at Arnold's tendency to take credit, and Teresa saw a flash of irritation cross her ex's face before his practiced smile returned. As the evening progressed, Arnold seemed determined to monopolize their attention. He regaled the table with stories of his music empire's success, name-dropping celebrities, and making veiled references to his past with Teresa. "Remember that benefit concert in Vienna, Teresa?" he said at one point. "You wore that stunning red gown, and the conductor couldn't take his eyes off you. What was his name again?" Teresa felt heat rise in her cheeks, both from embarrassment and anger. He was deliberately trying to remind Patrick of the glamorous life she had lived with him, to make their current life seem small by comparison. "I don't dwell on the past," Teresa said coolly. "I'm much more interested in the present and future." She turned to the woman beside her, deliberately engaging in conversation about the literacy program where she volunteered. But Arnold wasn't easily deterred. Throughout dinner, he found ways to insert himself into every conversation, to draw connections between his world and theirs. When the dancing began, he was quick to approach Teresa. "One dance," he said, extending his hand, "for old time's sake." Surely Patrick won't mind. It was a trap, and everyone at the table knew it. If she refused, she would appear petty in front of Patrick's professional contacts. If she accepted, she would be giving Arnold exactly what he wanted, a chance to have her in his arms again. Patrick made the decision for her. "Actually, I do mind," he said, standing and taking Teresa's hand. "If you'll excuse us, I promised my girlfriend the first dance." He led Teresa onto the dance floor, leaving Arnold standing alone at their table. As they moved together to the slow jazz number, Teresa could feel the tension in Patrick's body. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. I didn't know how to handle that without causing a scene. You don't have to handle him alone, Patrick reminded her, his voice tight with controlled anger. I know he's trying to make me feel inferior, to remind you of what you gave up. But Teresa, I need you to know something. I may not have billions of dollars or a music empire, but I love you more than he ever could. I see you, the real you, not just a beautiful accessory to my success. Teresa pulled back to look into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability beneath his anger. I know, she said softly. You're the one I choose, Patrick. Every day I choose you. Nothing Arnold does or says will change that. They finished the dance in silence, but their connection spoke volumes to anyone watching, including Arnold, whose dark eyes followed their every move. The weeks following the gala were tense. Arnold seemed to realize that his current tactics weren't working and shifted his approach. Instead of pursuing Teresa directly, he began cultivating relationships with Patrick's professional circle. He commissioned expensive pieces from artists in Patrick's gallery, hosted exclusive events that Patrick's colleagues attended, and gradually made himself indispensable to the Los Angeles art scene. The message was clear: he could make or break careers with his influence and wealth. Patrick tried to remain unaffected, but Teresa could see the strain. Gallery owners, who had been enthusiastic about his work, suddenly became lukewarm, suggesting he might want to evolve his style or consider new directions. Fellow photographers mentioned casually that Arnold had expressed interest in funding a major exhibition, but only for artists who met certain criteria that seemed specifically designed to exclude Patrick. The professional pressure was subtle but constant, like water wearing away at stone. One night, Patrick came home from a meeting looking defeated. The Morrison Gallery is postponing my solo show, he said quietly. They say they need to reassess their schedule, but I know the real reason. Arnold's money talks louder than my talent. Teresa had reached her breaking point. The next morning, she drove to Arnold's new office building in Century City, marching past his surprised assistant and into his executive suite. Arnold looked up from his desk, a satisfied smile playing at his lips. Teresa, I was wondering when you'd come to see me. His calm demeanor only fueled her anger. This ends now, she said, her voice shaking with fury. Whatever game you're playing, whatever point you're trying to prove, it stops today. Arnold leaned back in his chair, studying her with those calculating eyes. I'm not playing any games, he said mildly. I'm simply living my life and conducting my business. If that happens to intersect with your world, well, Los Angeles is a small town in many ways. Teresa slammed her hands on his desk. Don't insult my intelligence. You're systematically trying to destroy Patrick's career because you can't stand that I chose him over you. You're pathetic, Arnold. All your money and power, and you're still just a jealous ex who can't let go. For the first time since he'd arrived in LA, she saw real emotion crack through Arnold's facade. You want to know the truth? He said, standing to face her. Yes, I'm jealous. Yes, it kills me to see you with him. But not for the reasons you think. I'm jealous because he figured out what I never could, Arnold continued, his voice raw with an honesty she'd rarely heard from him. How to love you without trying to own you. How to support your dreams without making them secondary to his own. I see how he looks at you, like you're his whole world, not just another acquisition. And I realize that's how I should have looked at you. Teresa was stunned into silence by his admission. Arnold moved around the desk, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough that she could see the pain in his eyes. I built my empire on understanding what people want and giving it to them, he said. But I never understood what you really wanted. You wanted a partner, not a provider. You wanted love, not luxury. And that photographer, with his simple life and genuine heart, gives you everything I couldn't. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. I'll back off. I'll stop the interference with his career, stop trying to insert myself into your lives. But I need something from you in return. Teresa's guard immediately went up. What? She asked warily. Arnold returned to his desk, pulling out a document. 1 year, he said. Give me 1 year to prove I can be in Los Angeles without interfering in your life. Let me show you that I can respect your choices and boundaries. After that, if you still want me gone, I'll sell everything and leave California. Teresa stared at the document, which appeared to be some sort of legal agreement outlining Arnold's promise to cease all interference with Patrick's career and maintain distance from their personal lives. You're serious, she said, disbelief coloring her voice. You actually had a contract drawn up. Arnold's smile was self-deprecating. I'm a businessman, Teresa. I believe in getting things in writing. This protects both of us. It clearly outlines what constitutes interference and gives you legal recourse if I violate the terms. And what do you get out of it? Teresa asked, still suspicious. Why should I believe you'll honor this? Arnold's expression was unusually vulnerable. Because I've already lost you once by being selfish and controlling. I won't make that mistake again. What I get is the chance to prove I've changed, that I can exist in the same city as you without being a threat to your happiness. Maybe, eventually, we could even be friends. The word seemed to cost him something to say. Teresa took the document, folding it carefully. I need to discuss this with Patrick, she said. This affects him too. Arnold nodded. Of course. Take your time. But Teresa, whatever you decide, I want you to know that seeing you happy, even with someone else, has taught me more about love than all the years we were together. That evening, Teresa showed Patrick the agreement, explaining her confrontation with Arnold and his unexpected proposal. Patrick read through the document carefully, his expression thoughtful. It's comprehensive, he admitted. He's essentially legally binding himself to leave us alone. They discussed it for hours, weighing the risks and benefits. Patrick's initial instinct was to reject anything from Arnold, but Teresa pointed out that having legal recourse might actually give them more power in the situation. What bothers me, Patrick said finally, is that we're still letting him dictate terms. Even this agreement is about him, his timeline, his conditions. Teresa nodded, understanding his frustration. But what's our alternative? He's made it clear he's not leaving love voluntarily. At least this way, we have some control. They decided to sleep on it, but both knew they were leaning toward accepting. The promise of a year without interference, backed by legal consequences, was too tempting to refuse. The next morning, Teresa made a decision that surprised them both. I think we should modify the agreement, she said. Add our own terms. Make it truly mutual, rather than just accepting what he's offering. Teresa returned to Arnold's office with Patrick by her side, the modified agreement in hand. Arnold's surprise at seeing them together was quickly masked by his business demeanor. We'll accept your proposal, Teresa said, but with some changes. She outlined their additions. Arnold would not only cease interference, but would actively support Patrick's career when appropriate, without strings attached. He would maintain a minimum physical distance from their regular haunts. Most importantly, any future contact would go through their lawyers unless explicitly invited otherwise. Arnold reviewed the changes, a slight smile playing at his lips. You've learned well, he said, looking at Teresa with something like pride. "These are fair modifications." He signed the amended agreement without hesitation, then stood and extended his hand to Patrick. "I owe you an apology," he said. "My behavior has been inexcusable. You're a talented artist who deserves success on your own merits, not as a pawn in my personal issues." Patrick hesitated, then shook Arnold's hand briefly. "I appreciate that," he said carefully. "I hope you'll honor this agreement." Arnold's gaze moved between them. "I will. You have my word, for whatever that's worth to you now." The first few weeks after signing the agreement were surreal. True to his word, Arnold withdrew his influence from Patrick's professional sphere. The Morrison Gallery suddenly found space in their schedule for Patrick's exhibition. Fellow artists who had grown distant became friendly again. It was as if a shadow had lifted from their lives. Teresa found herself able to write with renewed focus, no longer constantly looking over her shoulder or worrying about Arnold's next move. Yet his absence was almost as noticeable as his presence had been. They would spot him occasionally at large events, always maintaining the agreed-upon distance, offering only polite nods of acknowledgement. Teresa was surprised to find that seeing him no longer filled her with anxiety or anger. Instead, she felt a strange sort of pity for the man who had everything except the ability to truly connect with others. Patrick noticed the change in her too. "You seem lighter," he observed one evening, as they cooked dinner together. "Like you've finally let go of something heavy you've been carrying." Teresa considered his words. "I think I have," she admitted. "For so long, Arnold represented my biggest failure, my worst judgment. But now I see him as just a chapter in my story, not the whole book." Patrick's exhibition at the Morrison Gallery was a tremendous success. The opening night was packed with genuine art enthusiasts and collectors, there for the work itself rather than any drama surrounding the artist. Teresa watched with pride as Patrick discussed his pieces with passionate eloquence, his confidence radiating in a way that made him even more attractive to her. Several pieces sold within the first hour, and a prominent art critic pulled Patrick aside for an interview. Teresa was admiring one of Patrick's photographs, a stunning capture of dawn breaking over the Pacific, when she sensed someone beside her. She turned to find Miranda Chen, a well-known gallery owner from San Francisco. "Your boyfriend has quite an eye," Miranda said. "I'm particularly impressed by his ability to find beauty in ordinary moments. It's a rare gift." They chatted about art and photography, and Miranda mentioned she was looking for new artists for her gallery's upcoming contemporary showcase. "I'll definitely be in touch with Patrick," she promised before moving on. Later, Teresa learned that Miranda was one of the few major gallery owners who had never taken Arnold's money, priding herself on discovering talent independently. It felt like a sign that Patrick's career would flourish on its own merits. 6 months into their agreement, Teresa received an unexpected letter delivered to her agent's office. The return address was Arnold's, but the handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar. Inside, she found a brief note in Arnold's hand. "This was sent to my office by mistake. I thought you should have it directly. Congratulations." Attached was a letter from a major New York publisher expressing serious interest in her manuscript. The editor praised her authentic voice and emotional depth, saying the story had moved her to tears. Teresa's first instinct was suspicion. Had Arnold somehow influenced this? But her agent confirmed that the publisher was legitimate and had no connections to Stone's Entertainment. "They found your manuscript through the slush pile," her agent said excitedly. "This is all you, Teresa. Your talent speaking for itself." That evening, she shared the news with Patrick, who swept her up in a joyful embrace. "I knew it would happen," he said. "Your writing is too good to be ignored, As they celebrated with champagne on their balcony, Teresa thought about Arnold's note. The simple congratulations, without any attempt to take credit or insert himself into her success, suggested he might actually be changing. The true test of Arnold's transformation came at an industry event where all three of them were present. It was a launch party for a new arts magazine, where Patrick had been featured as an emerging talent. Teresa accompanied him proudly, wearing a dress he had photographed her in for one of his series. They were enjoying themselves, mingling with other artists and writers, when Arnold arrived. He was with a date, a sophisticated woman who seemed genuinely interested in the art rather than just Arnold's wealth. Arnold spotted them across the room and, true to their agreement, maintained his distance. But later in the evening, his date approached them alone. "I'm Sarah," she introduced herself. "I hope this isn't awkward, but I wanted to tell you how much I admire your work," she said to Patrick. "I saw your exhibition at Morrison Gallery. The piece with the abandoned pier at sunset particularly moved me." She turned to Teresa. "And I've been following your essays online. Your piece about finding yourself after loss resonated deeply with me." The conversation was pleasant and genuine, with no mention of Arnold until Sarah was leaving. "He's trying, you know," she said quietly. "I know the history, and I know it's not my place, but I've never seen someone work so hard to change their patterns. Anyway, enjoy your evening." That night, Teresa found herself unable to sleep, Sarah's words echoing in her mind. She slipped out to the balcony, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the cool ocean breeze. The city lights twinkled below, each one representing a life, a story, dreams and disappointments. She thought about her own journey. From the naive girl who had been dazzled by Arnold's world to the woman she was now, secure in her choices and her worth. Patrick joined her after a few minutes, somehow sensing her restlessness even in sleep. "What's on your mind?" he asked, pulling her close. Teresa leaned into his warmth. "I was thinking about forgiveness," she admitted. "Not taking him back or being friends, but just letting go of the anger." Sarah seemed nice, normal. Maybe Arnold really is trying to be different. Patrick was quiet for a moment. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," he said finally, "but holding on to anger only hurts us. If you're ready to let it go, I support that. Just remember that forgiveness is for you, not for him." 2 weeks later, Teresa signed her publishing contract. The advance wasn't huge, but it was respectable for a debut novelist, and the publisher's enthusiasm for her work was genuine. Her editor, a sharp woman named Claire, who had championed the book through acquisitions, flew out from New York to meet her. Over lunch in Santa Monica, they discussed revision plans and marketing strategies. "Your story about rebuilding after betrayal feels very authentic," Claire noted. "Without being too personal, I sense you've lived some of these emotions." Teresa nodded carefully. "Let's just say I've had my own journey with learning to trust again." Claire smiled knowingly, but didn't push. They spent the afternoon walking along the beach, brainstorming ideas for the book's promotion. "We're thinking about positioning this as women's fiction with crossover appeal," Claire explained. "The themes of self-discovery and second chances resonate across demographics." As they parted, Claire mentioned something that surprised Teresa. "You know, we had an inquiry about your book from Stone's Entertainment a while back. We turned them down, of course. We don't let other media companies influence our publishing decisions. But I thought you should know your work is already generating buzz." As autumn arrived in Los Angeles, both Teresa and Patrick found their careers flourishing. Patrick received an invitation to exhibit at an international photography festival, while Teresa's revision process with Claire was pushing her writing to new heights. They had settled into a rhythm of supporting each other's work while maintaining their own identities. Their apartment had become a creative haven, with Patrick's photographs adorning the walls and Teresa's writing desk overlooking the ocean. One evening, while reviewing gallery proofs, Patrick mentioned something unexpected. "I got a commission request today," he said casually. "From Sarah, actually. Arnold's girlfriend. She wants a series for her new wellness center in Malibu." Teresa looked up from her laptop. "Are you going to take it?" Patrick showed her the proposal. "The project is interesting. Capturing spaces that promote healing and peace. And she's offering my full rate, no special treatment expected. What do you think?" They discussed it rationally, weighing the pros and cons. In the end, Patrick decided to accept, viewing it as a sign that they could all coexist professionally without drama. The one-year anniversary of their agreement with Arnold approached with little fanfare. He had honored every aspect of their contract, maintaining distance while quietly supporting the arts community in ways that benefited everyone, not just those in his orbit. Teresa heard through industry contacts that he had established a grant program for emerging artists with no strings attached and had donated substantially to literacy programs across the city. On the exact date of their anniversary, a simple card arrived at their apartment. Inside, Arnold's handwriting simply said, "1 year, as promised. The choice is yours now. Whatever you decide, I wish you both continued happiness and success." There was no manipulation, no guilt trip, just an acknowledgement of the agreement's end. Teresa and Patrick discussed it that evening. "He kept his word," Patrick said, somewhat grudgingly. "I never thought I'd say this, but maybe he actually has changed." Teresa nodded slowly. "The question is, what do we do now? Ask him to leave LA, or accept that he's part of the landscape here?" After much deliberation, they decided to take no action. Arnold had proven he could exist in their city without interfering in their lives. Demanding he leave now would feel petty and unnecessary. Instead, they chose to simply continue living their lives, treating Arnold as they would any other distant acquaintance in their professional circles. The decision felt mature and freeing, a final letting go of the past's hold on their present. Teresa's book launched to positive reviews and respectable sales. The launch party at a bookstore in Beverly Hills was packed with friends, fellow writers, and supporters. Patrick documented the evening with his camera, capturing Teresa's joy as she read excerpts to the engaged audience. Even her parents flew in from Ohio, finally meeting Patrick and expressing their approval of the man who had helped their daughter find happiness again. As Teresa signed books and chatted with readers, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This success was entirely hers, built on her talent and perseverance. 6 months after her book launch, Teresa received an unexpected call from her agent. "I have an interesting opportunity," she said. "A major streaming platform wants to adapt your novel. They're offering a generous option and want you involved in the screenplay adaptation." Teresa's heart raced with excitement. "That's amazing. Which platform?" Her agent named one of the biggest services known for quality productions. "There's just one thing," her agent continued. "The production company bringing the project is new, but they have solid backing and a great track record with similar adaptations. They're called Moonrise Productions." Later research revealed that Moonrise Productions had no connection to Arnold or his empire. It was run by 2 women who had built their reputation on adapting female, authored novels with sensitivity and respect for the source material. Teresa accepted the deal, thrilled at the new opportunity. At the contract signing, one of the producers mentioned something in passing. "You know, we had to fight off Stone's Entertainment for this. They were very interested, but we felt strongly that this story needed a female perspective throughout the adaptation process." Teresa appreciated both the producer's stance and, surprisingly, Arnold's restraint in not pushing harder for the rights. As Teresa dove into the screenplay adaptation, learning the new medium with enthusiasm, Patrick's photography career reached new heights. He was offered a solo exhibition at LACMA, one of the city's most prestigious venues. The series, titled Love in the Time of Healing, featured intimate portraits of couples who had overcome significant challenges. Without exploiting their own story, Patrick had managed to capture universal truths about resilience and connection that resonated with viewers. The opening night was a triumph. Critics praised Patrick's ability to capture vulnerability and strength in equal measure. Several pieces sold to major collectors, and museum acquisition was discussed for others. Teresa stood by his side, radiant with pride, wearing the same simple black dress she'd worn to his first gallery opening. "You've come so far," she whispered during a quiet moment. Patrick kissed her temple. "We both have." Together, among the attendees, they spotted Arnold with Sarah, maintaining respectful distance, but clearly there to support the arts. They exchanged brief nods, a silent acknowledgement of how far they'd all come. On a perfect Sunday morning, Patrick suggested they revisit the coffee shop where they'd first met. It had been nearly 3 years since that fateful morning when he'd gathered courage to approach her table. The cafe looked exactly the same, still filled with the comforting aroma of coffee and quiet conversation. They even managed to snag their old corner table. "I've been thinking," Patrick said, seeming unusually nervous. "About that promise you made to me. About being faithful." Teresa's heart skipped, wondering where this was going. Patrick pulled out a small velvet box, his hand slightly trembling. "You've kept that promise in every way that matters. You've been faithful not just to me, but to yourself, to your dreams, to the life we've built together. Teresa Campbell, you've taught me that real love isn't about grand gestures or empires built on songs. It's about showing up every day, choosing each other even when it's difficult." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, the diamond catching the morning light. "Will you marry me? Will you promise to keep choosing us, to keep building this life we've created?" Through tears of joy, Teresa said yes, sealing their engagement with a kiss that tasted of coffee and forever. The wedding was small and perfect, held on the beach where they'd had their first real date. Teresa wore a flowing dress that moved like water in the ocean breeze, while Patrick looked handsome in a light grey suit. Their families and closest friends gathered as the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Maria served as Teresa's maid of honor, while Patrick's brother stood as his best man. The ceremony was simple but deeply personal, with vows they'd written themselves. "I promise to be faithful to you," Teresa said, her voice clear and strong. "Not because of who I was or what I've been through, but because of who you've helped me become. You saw me when I couldn't see myself, loved me when I was still learning to love myself again. I promise to support your dreams, to dance with you in our kitchen, to find beauty in ordinary moments, and to choose you every single day." Patrick's vows spoke of patience, of art, of finding his muse not in her image, but in her strength. As they exchanged rings, Teresa caught a glimpse of Arnold among the distant beachgoers, walking with Sarah. Too far away to intrude, but perhaps taking a moment to witness the happiness he'd once threatened. The reception was held at their favorite restaurant, filled with laughter, heartfelt toasts, and terrible dancing. Claire flew in from New York to celebrate, announcing that Teresa's second book had just sold in a major deal. Patrick's parents welcomed Teresa into their family with warm embraces and promises of embarrassing childhood stories. As the evening wound down, the newlyweds escaped to the beach for a moment alone. No billionaire ex-boyfriends at our wedding, Patrick joked, spinning her in the sand. Teresa laughed, free and light. Just us, she agreed. Exactly as it should be. Looking back at their journey, from that coffee shop meeting to this moment as husband and wife, Teresa marveled at how much had changed. She had learned that faithfulness wasn't just about romantic fidelity. It was about being true to yourself, honest with those you love, and brave enough to choose happiness even when your past tries to pull you back. Arnold's arrival in Los Angeles had tested them. But ultimately, it had only proven what she and Patrick had built together was stronger than any external force. As they walked hand in hand back to their reception, Teresa thought about the girl she'd been when she'd fled to California, broken and lost. That girl could never have imagined this moment. Not because of the wedding or the success, but because of the peace. She had kept her promise to Patrick, but more importantly, she had kept a promise to herself, to never again settle for anything less than real, honest, transformative love. And in Patrick's steady presence, in their simple life by the ocean, in their shared dreams and daily choices, she had found exactly that. The billionaire ex who had once defined her world had become just a footnote in their story, while the photographer who saw beauty in ordinary moments had become her forever. And that's the end of today's story. Now I want to hear from you. What lesson did this story leave with you? Drop your answer below. I can't wait to read them all. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our weekly stories. Until next time, stay blessed.